The Moretti estate blazed against the December night like a cathedral of sin. Every chandelier had been lit, every surface polished until it reflected the faces of monsters wearing the masks of men. And at the center of it all stood Dante Moretti, a predator in a $3,000 tuxedo, watching the wolves circle. His jaw ached from clenching it. 3 hours. 3 hours of handshakes that felt like threats. 3 hours of champagne toasts delivered by men who had tried to kill him. 3 hours of smiling at the woman he was supposed to marry while his soul screamed for someone else entirely. The engagement party wasn't a celebration, it was a war summit dressed in silk and diamonds. Dante lifted his glass to his lips, letting the whiskey burn a path down his throat. His eyes, cold, calculating the color of a winter storm, swept across the ballroom. He cataloged every exit, every weapon, every man whose loyalty could be bought, and every woman whose smile hid a blade. Oldie habits, the kind that kept men like him breathing. His father had brokered this marriage from beyond the grave, a union between the Moretti family and the Castellanos. Two empires that had spent a decade painting the streets red with each other's blood, now bound by a treaty written in champagne and sealed with a ring that cost more than most men would earn in a lifetime. Vanessa Castellano wore that ring now. She stood across the room, surrounded by admirers, her crimson gown clinging to her body like a warning, beautiful, dangerous, and utterly hollow behind those calculating eyes. Dante felt nothing when he looked at her, nothing but the cold awareness that he was trading his freedom for peace. That every kiss would be a performance, that every night beside her would be a prison sentence served in silk sheets. His chest tightened. Where was she? The thought sliced through his mind before he could stop it. His eyes began moving on their own, scanning the sea of servers weaving between guests, looking for a familiar face, a quiet presence, the only person in this viper pit who had ever made him feel like he could breathe. Elena. He spotted her near the kitchen entrance, balancing a tray of champagne flutes with practiced grace. Her uniform was simple: black dress, white apron, hair pinned back in a modest twist. She should have been invisible among the glittering guests, but to Dante, she was the only person in the room who was real. She must have felt his gaze because she looked up. Their eyes met across the crowded ballroom, and for one fleeting moment, the noise faded, the politics disappeared. There was only her, those warm brown eyes that held no judgment, no agenda, no hunger for his power or his name. She gave him the smallest smile, a secret meant only for him. Then she looked away, returning to her work, and the world crashed back in. Dante's fingers tightened around his glass. He should never have let her work tonight. He should have ordered her to stay in the staff quarters, far from the circling sharks, but Elena had insisted. She always insisted. Said she didn't want special treatment, said she was just a maid, just a maid. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. She had been working in his household for 2 years. 2 years of watching her move through his home like a gentle ghost. 2 years of finding excuses to be in whatever room she was cleaning. 2 years of pretending he didn't notice the way his nightmares stopped when she was nearby. He didn't know how she did it, didn't understand why her presence quieted the violence that churned constantly beneath his skin. He only knew that when Elena was close, the screaming in his head went silent. And now he was going to marry another woman. The injustice of it burned like acid. Across the room, Vanessa laughed at something one of her sycophants said. The sound was sharp, practiced, designed to carry. She caught Dante watching and raised her glass in a mocking toast, her red lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She knew. Somehow, she knew about Elena. He could see it in the predatory gleam of her gaze, the way her attention kept drifting toward the serving staff, the way her smile sharpened whenever she looked at the maid in the simple black dress. Dante's instincts prickled. Something was wrong. He started moving toward Elena, but a hand caught his arm. Dante. His cousin Marco materialized at his side, voice low and urgent. Romano wants to discuss the shipping routes now. Later. He's getting impatient. If we don't, I said later. Marco flinched at the ice in his tone. Dante, the treaty can wait 5 minutes. But when Dante looked back toward the kitchen entrance, Elena was gone. His heart stuttered. He scanned the room frantically, searching for her familiar silhouette among the moving bodies. Nothing. She had vanished like smoke. A cold dread settled into his bones. Elena's hands were shaking. She pressed them. flat against her thighs, trying to still the tremor as she stood in the service hallway. Her cheeks burned with humiliation, her eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. Just breathe, she told herself. Just get through tonight. But the champagne stain spreading across her uniform told a different story, and the woman standing in front of her had no intention of letting her escape. Vanessa Castellano was even more terrifying up close. Perfect features arranged in an expression of aristocratic disgust, eyes like polished obsidian, beautiful and utterly merciless. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Vanessa's voice was silk wrapped around steel. Did you think I wouldn't see the way he looks at you? Elena's throat closed. Miss Castellano, I don't know what you... Don't. The word cracked like a whip. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending you're innocent. I see everything, little mouse. I see the way you orbit him, the way you find excuses to be near him, the way you look at my fiancé like he belongs to you. I'm just a maid. Elena's voice came out barely above a whisper. I would never. You already have. Vanessa stepped closer, and Elena caught a wave of expensive perfume mixed with something sharper, something chemical. Every time you make him smile, every time you calm him down when his demons surface, every time you exist in his space, you've been taking what's mine. He's not... Elena caught herself, but it was too late. Vanessa's eyes flashed with triumph. He's not mine? Is that what you were going to say? A cruel smile curved her lips. Oh, this is even better than I thought. You actually believe you have a chance, a maid, a servant, a nobody. Elena's chin lifted despite her fear. I don't want anything from him. I just want to do my job. Your job. Vanessa laughed, the sound brittle and sharp. Your job is about to become very, very difficult. She snapped her fingers, and two men materialized from the shadows. Private security. Elena recognized them from the Castellano entourage. Hard-faced men with cold eyes. Search her! Elena's blood ran cold. What? No, you can't. This is my engagement party. Vanessa's voice dripped with venom. I can do whatever I want. The men descended on her. Rough hands patted down her uniform, checked her pockets, ran through her hair. Elena stood frozen, humiliation burning through her veins, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. Please, she whispered, I haven't done anything. Well, well. Vanessa reached past one of the guards and pulled something from Elena's apron pocket. A ring. A diamond ring that caught the light and scattered rainbows across the wall. What do we have here? Elena stared at the ring in confusion. That's not... I didn't... This is my grandmother's ring. Vanessa's voice rose with theatrical outrage. A family heirloom worth more than you'll make in your entire pathetic life. And you stole it. No. Elena's voice cracked with desperation. I've never seen that ring before. You put it there. You must have... A sharp slap cracked across her face. Elena's head snapped to the side, pain exploding across her cheek. Stars burst behind her eyes. She tasted copper. Thief! Vanessa spat the word. Did you think you could steal from me? From the Castellano family? She turned to her guards. Take her outside. Let her cool off until the police arrive. No, please. Elena struggled, but the guards were too strong. They gripped her arms with bruising force and began dragging her toward the terrace doors. Let me talk to Mr. Moretti, please. He'll tell you I would never. Vanessa leaned close, her breath hot against Elena's ear. Dante is busy being my fiancé. By the time he notices you're gone, you'll be in the back of a police car. And even if he does come looking, her smile was pure poison. He'll choose the treaty over a nobody maid. He has to. That's what men like him do. Please. Elena's voice broke. It's freezing out there. The storm. Then I suppose you should have thought about that before you stole from me. Vanessa straightened, adjusting her gown. Oh, and one more thing. She held up a champagne flute. The liquid inside seemed slightly cloudy, off color. A toast to justice. She forced the glass into Elena's trembling hands. Drink. Elena shook her head. I don't drink, or I'll tell them you attacked me and they'll do more than put you outside. The guards' grips tightened painfully. Elena saw the threat in their eyes. She saw the cruel satisfaction in Vanessa's face. She saw no escape. With shaking hands, she raised the glass and drank. The champagne was bitter, wrong. It burned going down, and almost immediately a strange warmth began spreading through her limbs. Good girl. Vanessa plucked the empty glass from her fingers. Now get her out of my sight. The terrace doors opened and a wall of cold hit Elena like a physical blow. Wind howled into the service hallway, carrying snowflakes that stung her exposed skin. The guard shoved her forward and she stumbled onto the stone terrace, barely catching herself before she fell. The doors slammed shut behind her. For a moment, Elena just stood there, gasping, trying to make sense of what had happened. The cold was immediate and brutal, cutting through her thin uniform like it wasn't there. Snow swirled around her, driven by a wind that seemed to come from every direction at once. She needed to move, needed to find another entrance, needed to... The world tilted. Elena grabbed the stone railing, her vision swimming. Whatever had been in that drink was hitting her fast. Her thoughts felt thick, sluggish. Her limbs were suddenly heavy, disconnected from her commands. No, 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 no. She tried to take a step, but her legs buckled. She collapsed against the railing, then slid down to the snow-covered stone. The cold bit into her immediately, soaking through her dress, stealing her body heat with terrifying speed. She needed to get up. She couldn't get up. The drug wrapped around her mind like a thick blanket, smothering her panic, making everything feel distant and unreal. The snow falling on her upturned face didn't hurt anymore. The cold seeping into her bones felt almost peaceful. Elena's eyes fluttered closed. Just for a moment, she told herself. Just rest for a moment, and then the thought dissolved before she could complete it. Inside the blazing mansion, surrounded by enemies in evening wear, Dante Moretti felt a sudden chill run down his spine, like ice water injected directly into his veins. He stopped mid-sentence, ignoring the politician who had been trying to curry his favor. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. The feeling wouldn't go away. Dante stood in the center of his ballroom, surrounded by 100 guests, and felt like he was drowning. His skin prickled with unnamed dread. His heart hammered against his ribs with a rhythm that screamed danger, danger, danger. He'd learned to trust his instincts. In his world, ignoring that inner alarm meant death. He scanned the room again, more frantically now. Servers moving with practiced efficiency. Guests clustered in groups, their laughter too loud, their smiles too sharp. Politicians, crime bosses, their wives and mistresses, and bodyguards. No Elena. His chest constricted. He spotted one of his own servers, a young man named Paolo, and cut through the crowd toward him. Paolo's face went pale when he saw the look in Dante's eyes. The Maid. Dante's voice was low, controlled, but something dangerous lurked beneath the surface. Elena, where is she? Paolo swallowed hard. I'm not sure, sir. I saw her talking to Miss Castellano earlier, but where? The service hallway, near the terrace. Dante was moving before Paolo finished speaking. The crowd parted for him instinctively. Even civilians could sense when a predator was on the hunt. He ignored the questioning looks, the whispered comments, the weight of 100 curious eyes. The service hallway was empty when he reached it, but something on the floor caught his attention. A serving tray, abandoned, champagne flutes scattered across the marble, and there, a splash of dark liquid that looked almost like blood in the dim light. Wine, he realized, wine staining the floor. His vision narrowed. One of Vanessa's security guards stood at the far end of the hallway, trying to look inconspicuous. Dante covered the distance in seconds, grabbing the man by his jacket and slamming him against the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. What happened here? The words came out barely human, more growl than speech. The guard's eyes went wide with terror. I don't... Dante's hand closed around his throat. I will ask you one more time, and if you lie to me, I will rip your tongue out and feed it to you. What happened here? The Maid. The guard's voice came out strangled. Miss Castellano. She said the maid stole a ring. We put her outside. The world went red. Dante released the guard, who crumpled to the floor, gasping. His mind raced to calculating the terrace, the storm, Elena's thin uniform. The temperature outside had dropped below zero an hour ago. How long had she been out there? He ran. The ballroom was a blur of color and noise as he pushed through it. People shouted his name. Someone grabbed his arm. He shoved them aside without seeing who it was. Nothing mattered. Nothing existed except the pounding of his heart and the image of Elena alone in the snow. He reached the terrace doors. Locked. Of course they were locked. Dante didn't waste time looking for a key. His eyes fell on a heavy antique chair. Solid oak, meant more for decoration than function. He grabbed it, lifted it over his head, and swung it at the glass doors with every ounce of strength in his body. The glass exploded outward in a shower of glittering shards. The sound was deafening, a crystalline shriek that cut through the music and conversation like a scream. Guests cried out in shock. The orchestra stumbled to a halt. Cold wind howled into the ballroom, extinguishing candles, scattering papers, sending women clutching at their gowns. Dante didn't notice any of it. He stepped through the shattered doorway into the storm. The cold hit him like a wall, stealing his breath, biting at his exposed skin. Snow swirled so thickly he could barely see 3 feet in front of him. The terrace stretched out into white oblivion, and for one horrible moment, Dante thought he was too late. Then the lightning flashed, and he saw her. A dark shape huddled against the stone railing, half buried in accumulated snow, not moving at all. Elena. He crossed the distance in 3 strides and fell to his knees beside her. His hands found her face, ice cold, the skin waxy and pale. Her lips were blue, her eyes were closed. Snow had gathered in her hair, on her eyelashes, covering her like a burial shroud. No, 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 no. He pressed his fingers to her throat, searching desperately for a pulse. For a long, agonizing moment, he felt nothing. The world contracted to the space of a heartbeat that wasn't there. Then faint, thready, but unmistakable, a flutter against his fingertips. Alive. She was alive. Barely. Dante gathered her into his arms, lifting her from the snow as if she weighed nothing. She was limp as a rag doll, her head lolling against his shoulder, her skin so cold it burned against his own. He carried her inside. The ballroom had descended into chaos. Guests screamed and scattered as the Don of the Moretti family stalked through the shattered doorway. A frozen woman in his arms and murder in his eyes. Wind and snow swirled around him like a cloak, extinguishing more candles, plunging sections of the room into shadow. A doctor! Dante's roar cut through the panic. Get me a doctor now! One of his men rushed forward. Sir, the roads, the storm, nothing can get through. Then find someone who's already here. Dante's voice cracked with desperation. There are 100 people at this party. Someone must have medical training. He looked down at Elena's face, so pale, so still. Her breathing was shallow, almost imperceptible. She was slipping away from him, and there was nothing he could do. Nothing except hold her. Nothing except pray to a god he'd stopped believing in years ago. His eyes lifted and found Vanessa across the room. She stood frozen, her champagne flute still in hand, her face a mask of carefully controlled surprise. But Dante knew her. He could see the calculation behind her eyes, the wheels turning as she tried to figure out how to spin this in her favor. The rage that surged through him was unlike anything he'd ever felt. He laid Elena gently on a velvet chaise near the fireplace, then turned and walked toward his fiancée. Each step was measured, deliberate. The crowd parted before him like the Red Sea before Moses, sensing the violence that radiated off him in waves. Vanessa's composure flickered. Dante, darling, I don't know what you think. He drew his gun. The sound of gasps and screams barely registered. The world had narrowed to a single point. The woman who had tried to kill the only person he cared about. You put her outside. His voice was quiet, calm, somehow more terrifying than any shout. In the storm, knowing she would die. She stole from me. Vanessa's mask cracked, revealing the ugly desperation beneath. She's a thief, a common criminal. She is mine. The words erupted from somewhere deep inside him, from a primal place he hadn't known existed. And you tried to take her from me. He raised the gun, aimed it directly at Vanessa's forehead. The ballroom went silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. 100 witnesses held their breath, watching the fragile peace between 2 families shatter in real time. Across the room, Vanessa's father, Don Castellano, stepped forward, his own guards drawing weapons. Moretti, think very carefully about what you're doing. I am thinking clearly for the first time in months. Dante's finger rested on the trigger. The treaty is over. This engagement is over. You'll start a war. No. Dante's eyes never left Vanessa's terrified face. Your daughter started a war. Tonight, when she tried to murder an innocent woman. His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. I'm just ending it. The lights flickered, once, twice, then darkness swallowed the room. Quick pause. You know, the experts told me this channel wouldn't work. They said nobody has the attention span for long stories anymore. They said if it's not a 60-second dance video, nobody watches, but you're still here. If you believe that real storytelling still matters, and if you want to prove that we don't need short attention spans to be entertained, do me a favor. Tap that subscribe button. Let's build the strongest wolf pack on YouTube and show them they were wrong. Okay, back to the chaos. The mansion plunged into absolute darkness. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved, nobody breathed. The only sounds were the howling wind outside and the frantic pounding of 100 panicked hearts. Then chaos erupted. Screams, shouts, the sound of bodies colliding as guests stumbled through the blackness. Someone knocked over a table, crystal shattering, chairs clattering. The civilized veneer of the evening shredded completely, revealing the animal terror beneath. But Dante didn't panic. In darkness, he was home. His gun disappeared back into his jacket as he moved with lethal grace through the chaos. He'd memorized every inch of this mansion, could navigate it blind, if necessary. Right now, he had only one objective, Elena. He found her where he'd left her, on the chaise near the fireplace. She was shivering now, a good sign, his medic's training told him. Shivering meant her body was still fighting, still trying to generate heat. I've got you, he murmured, gathering her into his arms again. I've got you, Piccola. Stay with me. Her head lolled against his shoulder. A small sound escaped her lips, weak, confused. Dante? His heart cracked. I'm here. I'm right here. He carried her away from the chaos, navigating by memory through darkened hallways up a service staircase toward the master suite. The cold was seeping into the house now. Without power, the heating had died, and the mansion was surrendering to the winter outside. The master suite was marginally warmer, insulated by heavy curtains and thick carpets. Dante kicked the door shut behind him and laid Elena on the massive bed. Even in the darkness, he could tell she was in trouble. Her shivering had become violent, uncontrollable. Her breathing came in harsh gasps, and when he touched her face, her skin was still terrifyingly cold, like touching marble. She was dying. The realization slammed into him with the force of a bullet. She was dying, and there was no doctor, no hospital, no medical equipment that could save her. Just him, just his body, just his warmth. Dante's hand shook as he reached for the buttons of her uniform. This wasn't how he'd imagined this moment. Not that he'd let himself imagine it, not really, not consciously. But in the secret corners of his mind, in the dreams he never acknowledged, he'd thought about touching her, about holding her close, never like this, never with death breathing down her neck. I'm sorry, he whispered as he peeled the soaked fabric from her skin. I'm so sorry, Elena. I should have protected you. I should have seen what she was planning. I should have... His voice broke. The uniform came away, revealing skin that was mottled red and white, the early stages of frostbite. She wasn't shivering as violently anymore, and that terrified him. When the shivering stopped, the body was given up. He stripped off his own jacket, his shirt, his undershirt. Then he climbed onto the bed and pulled her against his bare chest. The cold of her skin against his was like being branded with ice. He gasped at the shock of it, but didn't let go. Instead, he wrapped himself around her more tightly, pulling the heavy fur blankets over them both, creating a cocoon of shared warmth. Stay with me, he commanded. That's an order, Elena. You don't get to leave me. Not now. Not ever. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Her eyes were half open, unfocused, seeing something that wasn't there. The drug. He'd recognized the signs, the dilated pupils, the confusion, the way she'd been found paralyzed in the snow. Instead of fighting to survive, Vanessa had given her something, some kind of sedative or paralytic. If she survived this, there would be a reckoning. No, when she survived, he refused to consider any other outcome. I know you can hear me. He pressed his lips to her temple, feeling the ice-cold skin, willing his warmth into her. I know you're in there fighting. That's what you do, isn't it? You fight, you survive. You've been surviving your whole life, Elena. Don't stop now. She made a sound, a small whimper of confusion. Her hand moved against his chest, fingers weakly curling. That's it. That's my girl. Come back to me. The minutes stretched into eternity. Dante held her against his heart, sharing every degree of heat his body could generate. He rubbed her arms, her back, her legs, stimulating circulation, forcing blood to flow through frozen extremities. He breathed warm air against her hair, her neck, her face, and he talked. He told her things he'd never told anyone, about his childhood, the violence, the fear, the constant certainty that death was waiting around every corner, about his father, cruel, brilliant, utterly incapable of love, about the nightmares that plagued him every night, the screaming faces of men he'd killed, the blood that never washed off no matter how hard. He scrubbed. You're the only thing that makes it stop, he confessed into the darkness. The only person who looks at me and sees something worth saving. Everyone else sees the monster, the dawn, the killer. But you, his voice cracked, you see me. Her shivering was returning, violent tremors that racked her whole body. He held her tighter, weathering the storm with her. When you first came to work here, I told myself it didn't matter, that you were just another servant, another face that would come and go. But then you started doing things, little things, leaving coffee outside my office when you knew I'd been up all night, humming while you cleaned these old Italian songs my mother used to sing, asking the cook to make my favorite meal on days when the nightmares were bad. He laughed, but it was wet, broken. You thought I didn't notice. You thought you were invisible. But I saw everything, Elena. Every small kindness, every gentle gesture. I saw you. Her breathing was steadying, deepening. Some of the horrible blue tint was fading from her lips. And I'm a selfish bastard, he continued. So I kept you close, made sure you were always assigned to my wing of the house. Found excuses to be in whatever room you were cleaning, told myself it was nothing, just convenience, just... He stopped, swallowing hard. I was going to marry her, Vanessa. I was going to go through with it because the treaty mattered, because peace mattered, because I thought I didn't deserve to want anything for myself. But when I saw you in that snow, his arms tightened around her convulsively. The treaty means nothing. The peace means nothing. None of it means anything if you're not here. If I can't see your face, if I can't hear you humming in the hallways, if I can't watch you pretend not to watch me while you fold the same towel 12 times. Elena stirred in his arms. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, confused, but unmistakably aware. To Dante, he looked down at her, and something in his chest cracked wide open. I'm here, you're safe. I thought, she blinked slowly, like she was trying to remember how to think. I thought I was dreaming. There was snow, and then I was warm, and I heard your voice. Not a dream. He brushed a strand of hair from her face with infinite gentleness. I've got you. She put something in my drink. Elena's voice was slurred, drowsy. The champagne, it tasted wrong, and then everything went fuzzy. I know. She's going to pay for that. Don't. Elena's cold fingers found his face, tracing the hard line of his jaw with a touch like butterfly wings. Don't start a war because of me. I'm not worth... Stop. The word came out harsher than he intended. He softened it by pressing a kiss to her forehead. Don't ever say that. Don't ever think that. I'm just a maid. You're everything. The confession tore from his throat before he could stop it. You're the only thing that matters. She stared at him with those warm brown eyes, now slightly glassy from whatever drug was still in her system. And then, with the uninhibited honesty that only comes from being half out of your mind, she whispered, I love you. Dante's heart stopped. I've loved you for so long, she continued, seemingly unaware of the bombshell she'd just dropped. Since the first time you smiled at me, you smiled, and I thought an angel must look like that when they're pretending to be human. And I know you're not an angel. I know what you do. I know the things people say about you, but when you smile... Her eyes drifted closed, but her voice kept going, dreamy and soft. When you smile, it's like the sun coming out. And I thought, even if I never get to touch that light, at least I get to see it. At least I get to be near it, even if I'm just a maid, even if I'm nobody. Even if you never see me at all, I see you. His voice was rough with emotion. Elena, I see you. I've always seen you. But she was already gone, slipping back into unconsciousness. Her body was warming now, pink slowly returning to her cheeks, her breathing deep and regular. She would live, and when she woke, everything would be different. Dante held her against his heart, watching the darkness beyond the windows slowly begin to lighten. The storm was passing, the worst was over, and when dawn broke, he would show the world exactly what happened to those who touched what was his. The hours before dawn were the longest of Dante's life. He didn't sleep, couldn't sleep. Instead, he watched Elena breathe. Each rise and fall of her chest felt like a miracle. Each small sound she made in her sleep, a sigh, a murmur, the whisper of his name, carved itself into his memory like scripture. He memorized the curve of her cheekbone, the sweep of her lashes against her skin, the way her fingers curled against his chest even in unconsciousness, holding on to him like he was the only solid thing in a shifting world. The room was cold, his breath fogged in the darkness, but beneath the heavy furs wrapped around each other, they had created a pocket of warmth that kept death at bay. Dante thought about his life, 20 years of violence, 20 years of blood and fear and endless calculations. He had killed his first man at 12, a rival enforcer who had been sent to murder his father. He remembered the weight of the gun in his two small hands, the kick of recoil, the spray of red. He remembered not feeling anything. That numbness had followed him ever since. He moved through life like a ghost, going through the motions, never quite connecting to anything or anyone. The world was divided into two categories, threats and tools. Nothing else existed, until Elena. She had slipped past his defenses without even trying, without knowing what she was doing, just by being herself, gentle, kind, achingly real in a world of masks and machinations. He had told himself it was nothing, just a passing fascination, just a momentary weakness that would fade if he ignored it long enough. But weaknesses didn't make you run through a storm. Weaknesses didn't make you break 100-year truce. Weaknesses didn't make you hold someone all night, praying to a God you didn't believe in, terrified that each breath might be their last. This wasn't weakness. This was everything. Dante pressed his face into Elena's hair and let himself feel it, really feel it, for the first time. The way his heart expanded in his chest when she was near. The way the constant screaming in his head went quiet. The way she made him want to be better, to be worthy, to be the kind of man who deserved to stand in her light. He loved her. The realization didn't crash over him like a wave. It settled into his bones like it had always been there, just waiting for him to acknowledge it. He loved her, completely, desperately, with every broken, blood-stained part of his soul, and he would burn the world to ashes before he let anyone hurt her again. Dawn crept over the mountains in shades of pearl and gold. The storm had passed sometime in the night, leaving behind a world transformed. Snow blanketed every surface in pristine white. Icicles hung from the eaves like crystal daggers. The sky was clear and pale, the kind of cold blue that promised more freezing temperatures to come. But inside the master suite, warmth had finally returned. Elena woke slowly, consciousness filtering in through layers of fog. She was warm, safe. Something solid and strong was wrapped around her, and she could hear a heartbeat beneath her ear. Steady, reassuring. She didn't want to open her eyes. If this was a dream, she wanted to stay in it forever. But reality crept in regardless. The memory of the terrace, the cold, the drug dragging her into darkness, and then warmth. Arms around her. A voice calling her back from the edge, Dante's voice. Her eyes flew open. She was in a massive bed, wrapped in furs and blankets, and she was not alone. Dante lay beside her, his arms wrapped around her like he was afraid she might disappear. His chest was bare, and so was hers. Elena's cheeks flooded with heat. She must have made some sound because his eyes opened immediately. Alert, watchful, that predator's awareness that never fully slept. "You're awake." His voice was rough, hoarse. "How do you feel?" She swallowed, suddenly aware of how close they were, how intimately their bodies were pressed together. "I'm warm." Something flickered in his eyes. You almost weren't. He stopped, jaw tightening. "Do you remember what happened?" Fragments surfaced through the fog. Vanessa's face twisted with cruelty, the ring that had appeared in her pocket, the champagne that tasted wrong, the cold, the terrible cold, and then You found me." Elena's voice came out wondering. "In the snow. You found me. I will always find you." The words were a promise, a vow, and both sworn on blood and bone. No matter where you are, no matter what stands in my way, I will always find you. She stared at him, heart hammering, and suddenly the memories rushed back, not just of the terrace, but of everything after. The darkness, the warmth of his body, the things he had said, the things she had said. "Oh God," her hand flew to her mouth. "Last night you said you loved me." The world stopped. Dante's eyes held hers, gray as winter storms, but somehow warm, so warm. "Did you mean it, or was that the drug talking?" Elena's throat closed. 1,000 responses fought for dominance. Deflections, denials, explanations that might preserve her dignity and protect her heart, but she was so tired of hiding. "I meant it." The words emerged small but sure. "I know I shouldn't have. I know you're engaged. I know You're not just anything." He cut her off, his hand coming up to cup her face. His touch was gentle, reverent, like she was something precious. "And the engagement is over. Vanessa tried to kill you. The treaty died the moment she locked you outside. But the peace, the families, everything you've worked for means nothing." His thumb traced her cheekbone, catching a tear she hadn't realized she'd shed. "None of it means anything without you. I spent all night thinking about it, Elena, running the calculations. And do you know what I realized?" She shook her head, unable to speak. "I realized I would trade my empire for one more day with you. I would burn every alliance I've ever built just to see you smile. I would walk into hell itself if you were waiting on the other side." His voice dropped to a whisper. "You asked me last night not to start a war for you. But don't you understand? You're already the war. You're the battle I've been fighting since the day you walked into my house, and I'm done pretending I'm not losing." Elena couldn't breathe. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. Men like Dante Moretti didn't fall for women like her, maids, nobodies, invisible people who existed in the margins. But his eyes said otherwise. His hands trembling slightly against her face said otherwise. And when he leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and pressed his lips to hers, that said otherwise too. The kiss was soft at first, careful, as if he was afraid she might shatter. But Elena had spent 2 years wanting this, dreaming of this, and she was done being careful. She surged up against him, her fingers threading through his hair, pulling him closer. He made a sound, surprise, hunger, relief, and the careful kiss transformed into something deeper, something consuming, fire and ice, violence and tenderness, all the contradictions that made up Dante Moretti poured into a single breathless moment. When they finally broke apart, they were both trembling. "I don't deserve you," he breathed against her lips. "I'm a monster. I've done things that would make you run, screaming, 'I will never be good enough.' You saved me." She pressed her forehead to his. "Not just last night, every day, every time you smiled at me, every time you made me feel seen. You saved me long before you pulled me from the snow." He closed his eyes and she saw something glistening on his lashes. This man who had built an empire on blood and fear, brought to tears by a maid's confession. "I love you," she said again, because she could, because it was true, because she never wanted to stop saying it. "And I love you." The words seemed to cost him something, a final surrender, a last wall crumbling. "God help me, I love you more than my own life." The sun rose higher, spilling golden light across the snow-covered world. And in the master suite of the Moretti mansion, 2 people who'd spent years circling each other finally stopped running, finally stopped hiding, finally came home. Noon light flooded the main foyer of the Moretti estate. The damage from last night was still visible. Shattered glass swept into piles, candle wax hardened on marble floors, 100 small evidences of chaos barely contained. The staff moved through the debris with quiet efficiency, but everyone kept glancing toward the grand staircase, waiting. Dante appeared first. He had changed into fresh clothes, dark suit, no tie, the kind of calculated dishevelment that projected power without trying, but There was something different about him today, something in the set of his shoulders, the calm certainty in his gaze. He looked like a man who had made a decision. Elena came down beside him. She was wearing one of his shirts, far too large for her. The sleeves rolled up, the hem falling to mid-thigh. No one had thought to bring her fresh clothes, and she'd refused to put on the uniform she'd almost died in. Dante's hand rested on the small of her back, possessive, protective, unmistakable. A murmur rippled through the assembled household. At the bottom of the stairs, a cluster of people waited with varying degrees of hostility. Don Castellano, Vanessa's father, stood rigid with barely contained fury. His guards flanked him, hands resting on concealed weapons. Vanessa herself was conspicuously absent. Marco stood off to the side, looking like a man who hadn't slept and wasn't sure if he was about to witness a treaty signing or a massacre. Moretti, Don Castellano's voice dripped with venom. You broke the agreement. You threatened my daughter's life. Your daughter, Dante interrupted calmly, attempted to murder a member of my household. A maid, Castellano's lip curled. You destroyed a piece that took 10 years to build over a maid? Dante's smile was thin and cold. I destroyed a piece that was built on lies. Your daughter drugged Elena and locked her outside in a blizzard. That's not politics, that's attempted murder. Where's your proof? The paralytic compound in Elena's blood, the testimony of my guards, the fact that your daughter was found with the specific sedative in her purse. Dante's voice hardened. Did you think I wouldn't investigate, Castellano? Did you think I would just accept your daughter's word? Something flickered in the older Don's eyes. Uncertainty, fear, good. Dante gestured to Marco, who stepped forward with a leather folder. Here are the results of the toxicology report. Here are the sworn statements of 3 witnesses who saw Vanessa plant the ring in Elena's apron. And here, he pulled out a final document, is the treaty your daughter's actions have rendered null and void. He walked to the massive fireplace that dominated the foyer. Flames crackled there, fed by servants who had been maintaining it all morning. Without ceremony, Dante tossed the treaty into the fire. The paper caught immediately, curling and blackening, years of careful negotiation dissolving into ash. Don Castellano made a strangled sound of protest, but his guards held him back. The treaty is dead. Dante turned to face the room. Your daughter attempted to kill the woman I love. That cannot be forgiven. That cannot be forgotten. This means war. Castellano's voice shook with rage. You'll destroy everything, both our families. No, Dante cut him off. This means consequences. War would require me to consider you a worthy opponent. You're not. You're a man who raised a snake and let her loose in my home. He stepped closer to Castellano, and for all his bluster, the older Don flinched. Here's what's going to happen, Dante said quietly. Vanessa will leave the country tonight. She will never return to my territory, never contact any member of my organization, and never speak Elena's name again. If she breaks any of these terms, I will consider it a declaration of war, and I will respond accordingly. You can't just... I'm not finished. Dante's voice dropped to something lethal. You will pay restitution. The amount will be determined by my accountants, but I assure you it will be substantial. Consider it compensation for the medical treatment Elena required, the emotional distress she suffered, and the insult to my household. And if I refuse? Dante smiled. It was not a nice smile. Then I will start by dismantling your shipping operation. I will move on to your real estate holdings. And I will finish by making sure every family in our world knows exactly what your daughter did and exactly how you tried to cover it up. He leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. By the time I'm done, you won't be a Don anymore. You'll be a cautionary tale. Silence. The room held its breath. Finally, Don Castellano's shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of him, replaced by the weary calculation of a man who knew he was outmaneuvered. Fine. The word came out bitter as ash. Vanessa will be on a plane tonight. See that she is. Dante stepped back, dismissing the man as utterly as if he'd already left. Marco will see you out, the Castellano. Contingent filed toward the door, defeated. But at the threshold, Don Castellano turned back one last time. You're making a mistake, Moretti. Throwing away a strategic alliance for a servant girl? Love makes men weak. Love makes men stupid. You'll regret this. Dante's arm tightened around Elena's waist. No, he said simply. I won't. The door closed behind them. The sound echoed through the foyer like a punctuation mark on a chapter finally ended. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Marco let out a long, shaky breath. Well, that was terrifying, and I wasn't even the one you were threatening. Vanessa Castellano was the threat, Dante replied. I simply removed it. His attention turned to Elena, who had been silent through the entire confrontation. She stood straight, chin lifted, meeting the curious gazes of the assembled household without flinching. Whatever vulnerability she'd shown last night was hidden now behind a quiet strength. But her hand, pressed against his back where no one could see, was trembling. He leaned down to murmur in her ear. Are you all right? Ask me again when I've had coffee, she whispered back. And maybe when I'm wearing pants. A surprised laugh escaped him, genuine, warm, utterly at odds with the cold mask he'd been wearing moments ago. Several staff members exchanged shocked looks. The Don was laughing. The Don was smiling at the maid like she'd hung the moon. The gossip would be epic. Dante didn't care. Attention, he said, raising his voice to address the room. Some of you are confused about what happened last night. Some of you have questions. Allow me to clarify. He pulled Elena gently in front of him, his hands resting on her shoulders, and faced his household with the same commanding presence he'd used to destroy the Castellano Treaty. This is Elena. She has worked in this house for 2 years. She is kind, brave, and infinitely better than anyone in this room, including me. His voice softened. Last night, Vanessa Castellano tried to kill her. I could not allow that. I will never allow anyone to harm her. He paused, letting the words sink in. As of today, Elena is no longer a member of the household staff. She is under my personal protection. Anyone who treats her with anything less than absolute respect will answer to me directly. Is that understood? A chorus of yes, sir, rippled through the room. Good. Now, he turned Elena to face him, cupping her face in his hands. I believe I made you a promise last night, something about never letting you go. Elena's breath caught. Dante, you don't have to. I'm not marrying a queen. His voice carried through the silent room, but his eyes were only for her. I'm not marrying for treaties or alliances or power. I'm marrying the woman who owns my soul. He dropped to one knee. Someone gasped. Several people made choked sounds. Marco looked like he might pass out. From his pocket, Dante drew a ring, not the gaudy diamond that Vanessa had worn, something simpler, more elegant, a deep green emerald surrounded by small diamonds set in white gold. Elena, his voice was rough with emotion. I've spent my whole life building an empire. I thought that was what mattered. Power, control, being the man nobody could touch. He shook his head. But you touched me without trying or without wanting anything from me. You touched me, and you changed everything. Tears were streaming down Elena's face. She didn't wipe them away. I can't promise you a normal life, he continued. I can't promise you safety or simplicity or any of the things you deserve. All I can promise is that I will love you, protect you, put you first always. His voice cracked. I will spend every day trying to be worthy of you. Every day until I die. He held up the ring. Will you marry me? For one heartbeat, the world hung suspended. Then Elena laughed, a sound of pure joy, incredulous and overwhelming, and pulled him to his feet. Yes, she kissed him, right there in front of everyone, her hands fisting in his jacket. Yes, yes, yes. The ring slid onto her finger like it had been made for her. Cheers erupted. The household staff forgot their professional reserve and applauded, some of them actually crying. Marco collapsed into a chair, muttering something about needing a very large drink. But Dante and Elena didn't notice any of it. They were lost in each other. Finally, completely. The cold outside, the enemies at the gates, the chaos of a destroyed treaty, none of it could reach them here. The storm had passed, and in its wake something beautiful had bloomed. Spring came early to the Moretti estate. The snow had melted weeks ago, replaced by the tender green of new growth. Cherry trees bloomed along the drive, their petals drifting like pink snow. The air smelled of flowers and possibility. In the garden, Elena stood in a white dress surrounded by people who had become her family. The wedding was small, intimate, nothing like the grand political spectacle that the engagement to Vanessa would have been. Just close friends, trusted staff, and Marco as a very emotional best man. Dante had wanted to give her more. A bigger venue, a famous designer, the kind of wedding that would make headlines. But Elena had asked for this, for something real, something warm, something theirs. He would have given her the moon if she'd asked for it. The ceremony was simple, traditional vows spoken with shaken voices and overflowing hearts. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Dante kissed her like the world was ending and beginning all at once. The reception flowed with champagne and laughter. Music drifted across the garden, and as the sun set in shades of gold and rose, Dante pulled his wife onto the dance floor for their first dance. Happy, he murmured against her hair. Elena looked up at him, this man who had saved her life, changed her life, become her life. Happier than I ever thought possible. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that she had once thought looked like sunshine. Me too, Piccola, me too. They swayed together as the stars came out, one by one, painting the sky with light. The past was behind them, the cold, the cruelty, the years of hiding their hearts. Ahead lay only the future. And it was bright, it was warm, it was theirs. The end. Savage Hearts Stories. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Leave a comment telling us your favorite scene. And remember, real love is worth fighting for.